5 of the Burlington High School Building Committee combined with the Burlington School Committee. The public can also access this meeting via WebEx. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and video recordings are being made. The meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting in person. Please note that while an option for remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, and the hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on the screen in advance and verbally once you're identified to speak. We request you please turn on your camera, and comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today. Okay.
Cannot send mail.
The first thing up is the approval of the...
No, you got public comment.
Oh, public comment, sorry. I'm ahead. Any public comment?
One with their hand up.
No one with a hand up? All right. Now we can go to the approval of the May 8th minutes.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a call. Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Dvorak?
Yes.
Eric's not here yet. Lisa Chen? Lisa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mimi?
Abstain, haven't had a chance to read them.
Okay. Doug?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 yes, 0 no's, and 1 abstention. All right. Now we need to go to the approval of the May 22nd minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, I'll go ahead and take a vote again. Chris?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Mimi?
Abstain.
I had to ask anyway. Doug?
Yes.
And Neil?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
So that's a 9-0-1 again. All right. Next up is the invoice approvals.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Doran Whittier invoice number 19 in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, and that will be just a school committee vote. Chris?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
The chair is yes, so that's 3-0-0. Next up?
I'd like to make a motion to approve TAPE invoice number 250509 in the amount of $79,950.
Second.
Any discussion? The answer is no. All right, Chris?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, the chair, so it's 3-0-0. And is there one more?
There's going to be a commitment, but I want to talk about the budget
Okay.
first.
Okey-doke. So, let's go on to, do you want to make your,
Yeah, I'm going to just touch on the budget, and then
Yep.
I'll hit on the commitment that
Yep.
we're looking to approve. So, the long and the short of it is, we're on budget with the $1.5 million to complete the schematic design. Chris and his team are continuing to work, as is Doran Whittier. I will point to the bottom line that says other in the 004, this bottom number here. This is actually $100,000 that was held back for basically the committee. You'll see that we've expended approximately $35,000 of that and have $65,000 remaining. So I just wanted to, allay any concerns that, we have funds to complete the schematic design and get us to our estimate. So that's good. Typically, at this point, we talk about commitments for approval. As you're aware, we're in the process of going through a CM at risk process to bring somebody on board to help us with effectively providing us with an estimate. In addition to that, the CM will look at constructability of the design, the phasing of this particular project, which is of critical importance for us to nail and understand. And they also participate in a reconciliation that we will have with Chris and his estimator. From there, they will also, to the extent we have to do some value engineering, they will assist with that. I will go into where we are with that, but in order to, I know I've been calling it free-con. Nothing is free in this world. And so we're effectively buying an estimate for them to do this over the course of a couple months. And I would like to commit $40,000 to hire a CM at risk firm to be determined. And I'll go through the process of that. But that's the commitment that we'd like to be able to put into basically a purchase order for them to do this work beginning in basically mid-July.
Questions? Does that come out of the 65?
Yes.
You want to make the motion?
Questions? I have no more questions. I'd like to make a motion to commit $40,000 to hire CM at risk firm to perform pre-construction services and complete estimate.
Second.
I will go ahead and take a vote. Chris?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Chair is a yes. It's 300. All right. And now we can go on to
Now the floor is
Tape.
Mr. Blessings. I will try and follow his cadence by going through the slides. You also, I believe, have the majority of his slides, so to the extent you don't want to look at the screen, I encourage you to look at the slides. So with that, Chris,
Thank you.
it's yours.
Thank you. So on the screen now is the updated site plan, which we are starting to get really excited about. I think this presentation actually has a few updated three-dimensional views too that, the more you work on it, the more you start to uncover the nice things about the design and the layout for the site. And I think we're starting to get there. So I'm excited about it. And what you see on the screen is the current iteration. I think there is still some updating that's going to be happening between now and the cost estimate, which is coming at the end of July. But for all intents and purposes, you see what is in front of you that's shaking out as the site plan. The things in white, those would be the roofs of the existing to remain buildings. So on the left-hand, the bigger portion on the left-hand side, that's the high school building. And the bigger portion on the right-hand side is what we've started calling the community building. So hope that name is okay for the purposes of distinguishing between what we kind of referred to as the upper building or the non-ed building. We're wrapping that into the community building now and the high school. So that's how we're differentiating our heads around it now. And the middle road in between is kind of a boulevard-esque type of road, and that would be additional circulation that allows cars to queue up along that middle road between the two. Additional parking at the front door, which is mostly probably going to be staff or designated visitor parking, and then the bus loop at the front door as well that allows for dedicated bus drop-offs. So not to steal the thunder of anybody who's going to report from the site logistics meeting, but we've had a couple and that's been really effective and good. We actually met with the Safe Routes to Schools folks, and They had a few comments, but nothing major. I think everything is shaping out like they would like to see as well. So I don't know if there's any questions on the site plan I can answer. Yeah.
Just one quick, I know you have the blue for the bus. Are the buses going around the back of the building again and then going into that little horseshoe loop? Is that?
Yeah,
the back of them?
so what would happen is the buses, everybody comes in the same entry point because there's only one for the entire site, right? So as you come in, sort of Dottie's Way, and you come down, you'd circle around,
Through the
follow the
major
mouse,
parking lot,
through
I
the
guess is what I'm
major,
asking.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the buses would bank in at their appropriate loop and then bank out. And so the difference here, though, is that when cars are coming in, the road is expanded a little bit to the right, so the queue kind of starts where the fork in the road starts.
Right.
And it goes all the way through that Boulevard Road, which is really just cars only. It's a double-lane road, but it's cars only. And so you get a lot longer of a car queue line that's safe for parents to queue in. And when the buses pull in and stop and start to pick up kids or drop kids off and their, flashers are out, the rest of the site can still maneuver because they're in the dedicated safe zone. And so as now, when the buses start to grab kids or the doors open, everything comes to a complete standstill and no one can pass anybody. And this resolves that. So,
And if I count, there are 10 buses that can fit in the,
yeah, that might be what's currently showing. I didn't know. 1, 2,
It was 10.
There's room
Okay.
for 12, though.
yeah, I think we're planning for
just again,
12.
yeah, I just, like I
12
said, I
buses, 10 showing, so.
wanted to clarify that, because that's how I understood it, and I wanted to make sure that everyone else understood it the same way.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, through the chair, is there a place for van drop-off, or will the vans drop off in the same area as the buses?
That's a good question. We cycled through that at the tail end of the last logistics meeting, and I think we need to come up with a good answer for that.
Okay.
Bob has all the numbers for that, but I don't think I have a solidified response for you at this second.
And also the BECC drop-off, how will that mesh with the parent drop-off?
So the
by number.
BECC folks would come, so the boulevard that kind of pulls through the middle is high school traffic. The BECC kids, students, and parents would continue on
Okay,
and then drop off on that side of the building where BECC's moving, basically where the Science Center animals are now.
So they're going to drop off the back for them?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
okay, that makes
Yeah,
more sense.
sense. But
And, yeah, and that road, Dottie's Way, since we're kind of increasing the shoulder on the right side, as it comes around, then there's still a passing lane. So even if that traffic gets backed up, cars can still come around. Hopefully, it's not too much of a backup, but that's where the BECC would happen.
And again, through the chair, there are school buses that service the BECC, so I don't know if there's
Yeah.
enough space for them to, pull over and make sure that the parents still have access to the walkway.
Got it.
Maybe that's something to talk to Deb about. I'm not sure how many buses are currently servicing the BECC right now, how much space they would need. They are smaller buses or
They're like
vans.
van type.
No, they're,
They're yellow.
Oh, really? Haven't seen that. Okay. Well, we're gonna
I
need
think
to-
we've got some area back there to do that.
Okay,
We
great.
just, yeah, we made a
Came
note
to
and we'll
mind.
keep updating.
Thank you.
Yeah, when those buses are stopped there, it will stop the traffic,
Oh, yeah.
except if they stop forward far enough, you can go through the parking lot.
right, right.
Which is what happens now when there are buses stopped there, the high school buses. You can avoid that by going through the parking lot.
You know what we're talking about, where the split is? Yeah.
So what we'll do is, and I know there's specific drop-off times, and so we'll take a look at that to
It's
understand when those.
always exactly when you have a meeting here, and you have to be there.
We'll make sure
That's
to
the pickup
understand
times.
sure-
that flow, to understand when we're going to have a potential.
It's a Murphy's Law kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. And through the chair, I'm sure Deb Clark would be pleased to not have to stand outside in her yellow rain jacket directing traffic every morning for the buses and the drop-off. So it could be a great improvement for her.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone online? Doug?
I would just like to
just point out, especially for people that may watch this and as we try to figure this out, everything in white is remodeled space. And so you can really start to get an idea of all of the space that they were able to save and not have to build from the ground up, but remodel. And then the light tan is new construction, which is the high school, basically the academic space. So we get a new high school, but it's a significant number of square feet of remodeled space, and I think that's important.
Thank you. No questions online? Okay, and Chris?
I vehemently agree with what Doug said, and I'm wondering if we could, do you have a close estimate of what the percentage is that we are rehabbing versus building new?
It's in one of the following pages.
Okay.
We've asked them to put that number together within the past week.
It's been in previous presentations, but Chris will explain.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, this next drawing, so admittedly, I need to work on some graphics here, but what we're trying to do is start talking about phasing. It matters on the cost estimate, how we phase this out in terms of what scope of work goes in what order. And so from a big picture, zoomed out perspective, the addition for classroom teaching and instruction, which is everything to the sort of upper end of the site here, that's the major addition. That would be phase one. And the gyms and the auditoriums, I think we're thinking are going to be some sequence of a summer project, so that main addition is going to be, let's see, about 2 years, maybe give or take on that, plus or minus. We'll hear from CEMs in a couple weeks about that. Their ideas on phasing and timeline, but call it 2 years, so you've got effectively at least 2 summers in there that we can take chunks of work and do them in whatever sequence the CMs think is going to be best. So we're showing the auditorium and gyms, which are all renovation scope, to happen in one of those summers, not at the same time, but in sequence. And then the next phase 2, major phase, would be moving all the students in and faculty into the new addition, and then we can start demolition of the center of the building. That's the big move for phase 2. And then phase 3 would be the completion of the high school building by adding the little wing that's by the bus drop-off there. That's the administration wing and a little connector in front of the auditorium. And then the final phase would be really the rest of this remaining community building that we aren't going to tackle for some scope of work like BECC or something like that in a summer phase. And so that would be the kind of way that shakes out right now.
I was going to say the phase 3 part of the building, just for people who aren't able to see what we see, is like the nurse's office, admin,
Yeah.
principal's office. I just wanted to kind of,
Yeah, and I'll try to show that when we show the floor plans
Okay.
here in a second. I'll try to talk a little bit more about that. So that's the phasing idea right now. I think this is also pretty subject to change as we think more about it, and certainly as the CMs come on board at the end of July, they'll have opinions and feelings about what we're talking about here, and so some things may shift and go, but the thing that I'm pretty confident won't change is that the new addition to the building will be built first, and that allows you to then swing students and staff into that while you do the other work. So that's the big story here. Okay, go to the next slide. So we're starting to put a little bit more detail around the 3-dimensional side of things. So this is being developed in sort of parallel with these working group meetings, the design working group meetings, the site landscape working group meeting, or site logistics working group meetings. And informed by the programming meetings and things like that, and sustainability for that matter. all of which are sort of starting to shape and form this building, right? So we start with program on the inside, and then we form that, and that drives what the outside shape and form are, and then it start to put the fenestration, which is windows and doors and glazing in, start to identify areas where we might have some green roofs. Green roofs are actually a stormwater strategy, if people are unaware of that. And so we can start to figure out how we're going to deal with stormwater and, the massive amounts of impervious area that are on this site already. We can deal with that a little bit with green roofs. So you'll see us start to introduce those strategies as it becomes clearer to us. What else to say here? I think this is just a really good, helpful way to visualize. One thing you can see in the, is there another one?
Yeah.
There's another image, yeah, that. In this image, you can see us starting to work out ideas around the bridge. So the bridge previously was 2 stories, and then we've made it 1, and we've been going back and forth and talking about that, but I think it's getting closer to the right scale right now and function. And so it's doing what we think it should do. And again, we're in schematic design, so these things are going to take on, we're going to get to a certain point and pause, and then we're going to get the project funded, and we'll pick it back up and make, final decisions. But I think it's starting to get, it's not done, it's not there yet, but we're starting to get to the right place. And for those that are interested, you can start to see that we got our tree stamp out, and we started putting the tree stamp everywhere. So we're adding a lot of trees, and that's important too on a site like this. So still be determined on all the calcs, on things like impervious, grass, what's happening there. That's all being shaken out as we go. But these are the newest and most updated 3-dimensional images we have, and as we get further along, you'll start to see more polished and different views and, materials kind of starting to show up on that. We'll have a meeting in the not too distant future to talk to you about material choices and things that we can grab. Not necessarily pick specific colors or finishes, but we want to grab a scope category. So are we talking brick? Are we talking something way more expensive than brick? Or, so those kinds of things. We're already edging in that direction, but when we get there, we'll show you, here's the materials we're thinking of using. We're not asking you to pick a color or trying to represent exactly what is going to be there, but we need to solidify that it's, $50 a square foot for that material, or $100 a square foot for that material, and kind of show you our intentions. So those are the to come in future meetings, but that's that. So the next.
Chris Monaco has a question.
Yeah.
What you're referring to as the community building, in a large part, is an extension of the school. So when the high school students would go into that building for a variety of things, go to the science center, go to work in the preschool, go to the administration offices for whatever stuff they need to do. So what would be the route that they would take to go from one building to another?
Can you go back to the site plan for me? There's a sidewalk right there that we're showing, and a direct entry right into the area that the high school would have the most adjacency to. So there's, that's.
So they'd come out like the main entrance and walk across?
Yeah, or you can see another angled sidewalk to the classroom wing that goes, there's like a sidewalk there too. So we're trying to create like a campus feel where there's multiple paths to get there, but you choose your own adventure kind of thing.
No, I like it, I like
Yeah.
it. I just, I want people to be aware that it's not a building that's not associated.
Yeah, yeah.
You
We
know, it's-
intend to, and this is maybe a more future conversation, but we have the part of the community building that faces the high school building needs a new facade on a
Right,
portion of it
right.
where we tear out the middle of this building. And I want to introduce some materials that actually talk back and forth between the two, so that when you're on the boulevard, you can look left or look right.
And they,
And it makes sense. It's a campus that's homogenized and kind of talks to each other. And that's the way we have to deal with the high school building anyway, because it's got parts that are literally attached to concrete, and this building will remain pretty much concrete. So, yeah, we want the campus to look unified. We want it to function unified. And that's one of our driving goals, so.
Thank you.
So I'm picking up on the community building, and I'm wondering,
Community
is there-
education.
like, I'm used to the term annex, which is like a building that's associated with another building. Like, I don't think we're tied to community building. We're just,
Yeah.
we don't like saying upper and lower, and so we just want to get names on them. The high school is pretty easy to identify.
You call it the high school?
Yeah. There is that.
The new educational space.
So, if there's suggestions on that, just shoot us a note, and we'll start referring it to it that way. I'm not asking anybody to, come up with a name now, but I take it, there are a lot of elements in that building that are associated with the high school, so.
To go a little further with that, there are not a lot of elements in it that are not associated with the high school. For, like, BCAT, the high school kids work at BCAT.
Yep.
The high school kids work in the preschool. They work in the science center. So, I mean, when I hear community building, I think, oh, we're going to have a place for music performances, for out-of-town groups, or, it really isn't that.
Yeah.
I think we're all looking for, when you're trying to tell someone who's new to town that they got to go to the high school campus to check with the superintendent's office for enrollment or something. It's like you go down there and you make sure you go to the
Whatever building, right? We got to come
Whatever
up with a
building,
name.
right?
for it,
And
We need to come up with, like,
And
annex
so that's-
isn't cool.
Yeah. No.
and you can't, upper building isn't the right
Education
term. So we're
Education
working on it.
center.
Let's
We're
put it
working
into
on
AI and see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
That's what the trick is these
Education
days.
center,
Something.
because it's got
We'll
the
think about it.
preschool in it.
What'd you want to say, Doug?
Education Center, yeah.
Education,
What'd you say?
Center for Education.
Center for Education.
that's good.
That's good.
Oh,
Things are happening.
Bam.
He's reveling in
Writing it down.
success.
All right, let's keep going. How about, is that okay, Catherine?
Yeah, I got 2 minutes, and then I'm headed
Yep.
to a birthday.
Okay, so the next sort of new information we wanted to provide is to talk about the Center for Education. And I'm going to try it out, see how it goes. And we've updated the floor plan here a bit, and I think the big thing to talk to you about here is how it works. So central admin is pretty much the same as you have today. That's in the left-hand side of this view. And the right-hand side is the
Give you that.
existing cafeteria that becomes BECC, so the Early Childhood Center. And that is completely built out. It gives them a little bit of extra space than they have now, and that's programmed with them the way that we talked to them through that. We have since pulled back a little bit on the scale. Before, it was like extending pretty far in, and we've just gone back to notes, revisited all of that. And we're doing it in a little bit more efficient square footage here. So that's the two bookends of this building. The district maintenance is still on the sort of south-facing side of this view. One of the bigger moves is that the Science Center moves from its position currently, which would be right next to the red arrow going into the BECC space. It moves from there up to the northern side that faces the high school, because we wanted that program to kind of have a more facing high school presence. There's also going to be a little outdoor learning center area on the adjacent side of that, so it produces opportunity for the Science Center to have some space that's dedicated for them. And it also increases the footprint of some of the district maintenance space that we're taking away from them, from the space that's down below us, not below us right here, but below the center section of the building that we have to take down. And so it kind of resolves some of the spatial things there. BCAT stays where it's at. And then the BTEC Welcome Center family area that's on the left-hand side stays where it's at, but expands a little bit as well. And then right in the middle, also facing the high school side, which has the access to the high school that Chris was talking about a second ago, would be the Child Development Program, which is the high school's preschool. But it's adjacent to the town's early childhood center, so it's kind of got a relationship there. And then we're also putting the robotics and robotics shop class in the center there as well, because that's a high school facing after school program, and we wanted to have that in this building, but right there in the facing side. And then upstairs, so that's kind of the downstairs area, and then upstairs to the right-hand side, you'll see the second floor. And what you're seeing here is that a lot of the second floor actually becomes open for future designated use in the district. And that is just yeah, go ahead.
No, I was thinking out loud. When you went into BCAT, right?
Yeah, we went in there.
And there's a staircase to go up that they put storage in
Okay.
above them?
Yeah.
Were you aware of that?
I don't know that I saw the staircase, but
Because they do store stuff up there. I just
Okay.
want to make sure that we give them another storage area if that's being taken away, or,
we're not taking any of their space, so
No.
whatever they have now, but that's not in their loft space, if that's what we're going to call it, is not where it's outside of this
okay.
space, this tent space.
I just was thinking about what's up above.
Okay, gotcha.
And I
We'll
just wanna
we'll
make sure
study that
we
and
were
make sure
aware
we
that
know.
there is a storage area up there that they do use. And I wanted to make sure that it's either, if it has to be taken away during the update and renovation, that they're given somewhere else to store all their stuff, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, we'll double check that. Thanks
Okay.
for letting us know.
Thank you.
So the upstairs, the second floor of this building to remain is really designated for future use. And I think this is an expansion safeguard for the district, whatever that may be, after-school programs or even community programs. The one thing we know about right now is is it Simons or Simmons? Simmons. Youth, the youth academy classrooms. We're putting that sort of right dead center because that is where the toilets are, that's where the elevator is, that's where the stairs are. And that can be easily blocked off in that chunk for access for that program that we know about right now. If there's other things that go in there, the plan would be for us to probably use that as some form of swing space as we renovate all the downstairs functions. We can put people upstairs while we do that work down here, and then when we're done upstairs, or done downstairs and people are in their final home, we can then go and clear all of that out. And we talked about this with the facilities folks, and they said they'd prefer that it is returned to like a blank slate, so that if in the future you want to do something, you don't have to pocket all the demolition work and all the sort of changeover. The systems are capped into and all of that. So that is how that works. And I don't know, this is kind of the first time the committee's seeing a detailed plan of this in this nature, and I just wonder if there's questions.
Megan?
I just want to make a comment that I'm excited to see that the BECC classroom looks like the space looks like it has expanded its classrooms. Currently, we have 7 classrooms, and there are 3 more pictured here, and I think that's wonderful. And I know that a lot of families express interest in having their children attend the BECC, so we would be expanding opportunities for people to access a wonderful preschool, and just opening up another resource for families. Thank you.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Yes.
I think this is awesome. I really like it.
Have fun.
Make sure we get that in the notes.
Okay, any other questions, or?
Just one quick logistical question. For the tenant space on the second floor, how much square feet is that?
I'll have to double check, Mimi. I don't have that off the top of my head right now.
Thought it was about 30, but that,
Yeah, I'll double check. I don't want to throw out
Yep.
the wrong fact, but we'll provide that back through the chair and we'll send that to the committee. Is that okay? Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. You may proceed when you're done taking notes.
Okay. Okay, so my stuff's a little out of order here. So the high school plans, The updates here are probably since the last time the committee's seen it, and you can't really see it on the screen, so you'll have to reference the materials that were sent by email or on the website after this meeting. But we're starting to layer in the FF&E, so that's all the fixtures and furniture and equipment. That's on these plans. That's important because we need to come up with the FF&E budget at the end of schematic design that's going to be part of the total project budget. It also gives us a check to make sure the classrooms are going to function the way that we think they will, both in terms of size and program. Things have shifted probably a little bit, and that's just from reactions of all the programming meetings we've been doing with the end users, so teachers. We had, I think, a little over a week ago, we had a session with all the high schoolers in the building where they rotated in 4 different sessions, rolling hundreds of participants in that. It was really good participation and got a lot of comments, some more useful than others, but we got a lot of feedback. So that was, I think it was well worth the effort that we took to do that time with them. And teachers were on there too, making their voice heard too. And so these plans have been updated for all of that. We've put some admin space distributed through all the floors. That's, I think, been there for a couple weeks now. And then you're starting to see, again, one of the big moves was the fitness center stays as it is currently today, and the science center is going to to this building, the education center. And so that's the strategy for that first floor. And mind you, there is a lower level, which I think is not the next view. The next view is the second and third floors.
So before you hit that, Chris.
Yeah.
Catherine, on this sheet in the top right,
Oh, yeah, I missed it.
go through square footages. We'll get you the percentages, but that breaks it out by floor, whether it's new or reno in the high school.
Gotcha.
And then the Center for Education
It's all reno.
is all reno, and that's about 96,000 square feet.
Okay.
And we'll break out the upper tenant space and send you that.
We'll break it out and send that to you.
Okay,
So, but
thank you.
just wanted to point that out, so. You wanted the lower level?
No, go to the second floor. You had it there. So the second floor is the bottom left image, and that's the floor that has the bridge connector on it. And again, some people ask why the bridge. Well, the major impetus here is that if you're in the end of one wing and you got to get to the end of the other wing, this provides a shortcut. And if you're on the first floor or second floor, you can see there's a stair right in proximity. So if you had to go over, you just go up a stair across and then back down, or up a stair across and up. So it's really convenient and works well to have it there. And it's better than having to go, the long distance all the way around. So that's the impetus for the bridge. I don't know that there's a ton. Anywhere you see that green shading is where we're thinking about green roofs, and where you're trying to deploy those, as I said earlier, as stormwater management strategies, but also anywhere that are adjacent to classrooms and students are going to be looking out a window. We don't want them necessarily to look at a roof that's ugly and, whatever. We want them to see nature as much as possible out windows, and so that's one of the strategies there. And then the next one is the lower level, which has the cafeteria and the 2 gyms on it, and that kind of rounds out the floor plans there, and that's been that way for a few meetings now. So we're starting to layer in. You can see some detail on the right-hand side where the kitchen is, and we started to layer in all the kitchen components after having a couple meetings with Bob, our kitchen consultant, and the kitchen manager. So we're starting to get lots of detail on these, and it's moving along in a really fun and exciting way. I think all the details getting there. So I think that's it for building specific things. The sort of last part of our update is related to life cycle building systems and life cycle cost analysis, which is the last couple pages of this stapled together packet that we gave you, but there's a broader, more context within the materials, I think, that were sent to you. I have two consultants here with us today, Marty, who's a mechanical engineer, and Mike, who is also mechanical engineer, but more on the sustainable side as part of how our team's structured. And really, the HVAC system can have pretty big impact on, does have a definite big impact on the budget for the project, both in terms of first cost, but then operationally, long-term, and sustainably. And so we've gone through the systems with the sustainability folks and the facilities folks, and gone through the options, and we went back and did life cycle cost analysis of all the options. And I should say that all these options originated from the original owner's project requirements, the OPR, that's owner's project requirements, and the basis of design BOD document that this committee approved a few meetings ago. And that document was produced to preemptively add sustainability intent to the project, and that had a lot of information in it. And you all approved it, assuming that that was there. So that drives a lot of these follow-on decisions, and that's why we did it in that order, so that, you know, when it comes time for you guys to see options, we're not throwing things out there that are not going to work for the desired intent that you've already put out there. And as a committee, you said, we want these things as our targets. And so, so as that is a baseline, I'll let Marty kind of quickly update this group on what, you know, some of those high-level goals and strategies targets were, and then what the options were at a high level. We're not going to get too far into the weeds, but if someone has in-the-weeds questions, feel free to ask them. And then we'll follow that up with Mike talking about the life cycle cost analysis of these and how life cycle cost analysis actually works. The short term for that is LCCA, if you hear us say that, so that's kind of the definitions. But Marty, do you want to go ahead and do the first part, and then we'll hand it over to Mike? Mick,
Can't hear him.
Marty, Vicky, yeah.
Hi, can everyone hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Great, thanks. Yeah, as we're talking about, we wanted to establish some sustainability goals for the project, which has been presented to the committee before. Some of those goals are our LEED Gold certification. We also have some energy use intensity, which is the EUI targets. That applies to some mass save incentives that the project would be eligible for, along with some targets for a passive house, standards for the building envelope. And we also wanted to achieve what we can from the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, which has some applicable tax credits for certain systems that were looked at. So we looked at some typical codes and programs that are available for the program. So we have the Mass Stretch Energy Code, International Energy Conservation Code, a couple of the codes that apply to this project. Our next slide,
So
we started to talk about
Marty,
sorry.
can I
Yes.
just interrupt? So, you know, I'm the one that has asked him to put this asterisk next to the IRA, so you guys were probably familiar with that from Fox Hill, because it is applicable to the geothermal system. The IRA for projects like this that are several years out, our advice is do not count on them, because we do not expect them to be there. But especially the way it's written in the House right now, anything can change, but relying on a tax credit, I don't think is a sound strategy in the current environment. So we can talk about that more, but schools like this, one down the road in Lexington, same thing. They would include it previously, and over the last 6 months, it's come to the realization that that's likely not going to be there. So I just want to make sure that that is in your mind as we look at this stuff. So Marty, apologies. I seem to always interrupt you, so I'll try and
That's a great point.
I'll try and stop.
That's an important point to consider, especially when we start talking numbers.
Yep.
What we did, we looked at several different HVAC options, and we want to give you a quick overview of what we're looking at. Our first system we looked at was a ground source heat pump or geothermal system. So this would consist of a central heat pump located in the mechanical room. That heat pump would produce hot water or chilled water and relies on ground wells as a heat source or a heat sink. We listed some pros and cons for each system as we go through. Pros for this system is very energy efficient. It's an all-electric system. As I mentioned, the heat pump will provide hot and chilled water systems that can be modified and expand for future. It's a very flexible system. The heat pump itself is modular, so it can provide some redundancy with certain modules combined. Some of the cons for this one, it has a high initial cost, and we need to make sure we have available space for the wells for a project of this size. Some of the photos, you can see there, one's just an image of it, and the small picture in the lower right-hand corner is a ground source heat pump system that was recently installed at Salem State University for reference. The second system we looked at, similar to the ground source heat pump, but this is an air source heat pump. So in lieu of using the ground as a heat source or a heat sink, this system uses the ambient air around. Typically, the central heat pump will be located on the roof. Again, it produces hot water or chilled water similar to the geothermal system. For this option, we looked at providing a gas-fired boiler as a backup system, but that gas boiler can easily be changed to an electric boiler with pretty minimal impact to the life cycle costs we'll see later on. Again, this is an efficient system, same benefits for the hot and chilled water systems running around. Some of the cons could be the fossil fuel if we want to choose that option, but we can go all electric, obviously. And typically, the air source heat pumps are located on the roof, so we need to make sure we have roof space available, and that's coordinated with any PV requirements that we want to achieve. Our third option we looked at was a variable refrigerant flow system. So this is an all-electric system. There'd be multiple heat pumps located on the roof with interconnecting refrigerant piping between indoor and outdoor units. So this is, again, an energy efficient system. It's an all-electric system. These heat pumps are modular also, so we can provide some redundancy. Some of the cons for this system is refrigerant piping throughout the building. That gets a little bit more of a concern with some changes coming up to the new refrigerants. There's some other safety precautions that have to take place when you have refrigeration within the building. So that's a concern that we want to make sure we address and that everyone's aware of. The other item for this system is the components are not interchangeable between manufacturers. So if you start with a certain manufacturer and you have equipment replacements required in the future, you most likely would have to stay with that particular manufacturer throughout the life of the system. And again, this system does take roof space, so we need to coordinate with PV systems that are available. The last system we looked at was more of a conventional system. This is a variable air volume system, which would utilize gas-fired boilers and electric chillers. So we'd have multiple energy recovery units that provide air at a constant temperature to all the spaces in the building. Each space is served by a VAV box, which is a variable air volume box, would regulate the amount of air that goes to the space and have a hot water reheat coil to provide temperature control in there. Some of the pros for this has the lowest initial cost. It's a simpler technology when it comes to the actual equipment in the building. And some of the cons are large main ductwork. This is a fossil fuel-based system. It might not meet all the sustainability goals we're looking at, and most likely would not qualify for any of the rebates that we're going to speak about for the next couple of slides. Before we move on, any questions as far as the four systems we talked about? We do have kind of a summary page here that I tried to group them all together and give a description and pros and cons as we move forward.
And again, that's in your, that is in the packet. We didn't print. We didn't necessarily print some of these slides, but in the packet and on the website, this is all going to be available. So if you want to study more on that.
This is in the presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
So is this now Mike, or is this still you, Marty?
Still Marty.
Oh, Marty, go
No,
ahead.
I think that Mike can jump in on the LCCA if that works.
Mike P.
There we go. Yeah, so as Marty said, we looked at these 4 system types and as far as pros and cons and everything, and then we also took these and looked at them life cycle cost analysis. And that life cycle cost analysis is going to look at the total cost of ownership over a 30-year period. Some of the pros and cons Marty was mentioning were initial costs and things like that, and that's all baked in, as well as operating costs, maintenance and replacement over that 30-year lifespan. And it gives a really good picture of, what is that real cost to owner? I mean, because for the school, I mean, you're interested in that long-term ownership cost, and that's what this life cycle cost analysis provides. Some of our assumptions are there for electrical utility costs. There's escalation, and then, as it notes, 30-year period, and then some cost per square foot is how we started off with that. You can go to the next, actually, yeah, you can go to the next slide. And that next slide, it's just essentially the same thing. It just notes the one difference there is noting the difference in the area, or the area that was considered for this. So for the high school plus the central office, or that new fancy name that was given to it, I can't remember what it was, but we can
Center
jump to
for
that next
Education.
slide where we start getting into these systems and looking at some of the pros and cons from a life cycle cost analysis basis. The 4 systems listed there are the same order that Marty went through them, and from top to bottom on this slide, the ones at the top are the most efficient, and then as you go down through, they're going to become less efficient. That's what that estimated EEY column is. That tells you how much energy it requires per square foot per year to operate that building. And then Marty went through some of the sustainability goals and the incentives and everything. And again, from top to bottom, the systems at the top are going to meet or exceed the sustainability goals. And as you go down through, it's going to be a little more difficult to hit those. Same with the incentives. The most efficient systems at the top are going to get the most incentives. And down through to the bottom with that conventional gas boiler and chiller system from, that would have been popular 10 years ago. That's not eligible for any incentive money. And then, as Terry mentioned, the ground source heat pump is the only one that would be eligible for any investment tax credit. If you want to, this next slide, this compares all those costs. It shows it graphically over a 30-year period, and we have the 4 system types there by the 4 different colors. Year 0, the highest initial cost is the most efficient system, the ground source heat pump, and then air source is next, the VRF, and then the VAV. So again, that initial cost is highest for the most efficient systems, and then it goes in order down from highest to lowest efficiency. And then what this really shows is that as you move to the right over that 30-year period, those systems invert, and the system that was the most expensive to start in year 1 is the least expensive total cost of ownership at year 30. And again, air source is next, and then the VAV and the boilers are going to be the highest cost of ownership over a 30-year life cycle. Go ahead and jump to that next slide.
Yep. Sorry.
Terry.
Yep.
And
Conferring with a colleague.
this slide, same systems, same information. We just plugged in the mass save incentives and the potential investment tax credits. So again, year 0, those are all the same. In order of most highest cost to least cost. And then you see in about year 2 or 3, that's when investment tax credit and some of the incentives would kick in, and it drops that geothermal and the air source heat pump a little bit lower. And again, you move out over that 30-year period, and when you get to the end, they're in the same order. There's just a bigger delta between them. That geothermal system is greatly reduced. It's close to $20 million less than the air source heat pump. The air source heat pump is another $15 million less than the VRF system. So it just really exemplifies how significant that looking at it on a 30-year life cycle cost is to understanding the long-term benefits of getting an efficient system. And this next slide, this is all the numbers that are baked into those 2 previous charts that we looked at. At the top there, that third column over HVAC first cost, that shows the $45 million first cost for geothermal. Air source, is like $9 million less than that roughly, and just goes down through. And then over all the way to the right, those 3 columns on the right just look at the comparative costs for the different, that without incentives is that first slide we looked at. Then we looked at it with just mass save incentives, and then the last column is mass save plus the investment tax credit. So a lot of information there, but the big takeaway is the more efficient the system, the higher the first cost, but the lower the overall 30-year life cycle cost is.
Yeah. Thanks, Marty and Mike. I think we'll pause for questions, and then we'll add some color to that as we go.
So, through the chair.
Yes.
In these estimates, does this include the cost of bonding this? So the interest over it, because with a $8.5 million difference between ground source and the air source over the 24, 27 years, whatever we end up bonding this for between bands and bonding, that's probably a little over $15 million, just the delta to pay for those two options. So when we look at it, I think we need to just make sure because
Right.
we're not paying cash.
We understood that, and Marty, I think that's a question for you guys, but I don't think you include the cost of bonding when you're evaluating these.
Right, so the true cost over 30 years for ground source is about 15 million more than it is shown, more than if you include the bonding of the air
Right.
source. I mean, they
Well, and I just need to.
You think it's 5% a year? What would you like us to carry?
5% is what we do.
Okay,
yeah.
we can revise.
4% on bands is usually, and 5% on.
We'll add, I think what we should do is add a column that shows that broken out so that people know that it's there, but not just like an asterisk or a number at the bottom.
Yeah, another column would be good.
Another column that just says bonding.
So I think you're going to flip-flop your.
Yeah.
We can definitely include that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That means it's not included presently.
That means it's not included presently. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know. Yeah, well, that's actually a great point, Doug. I'll be honest with you, because it does, we're going to talk about, I think, preferred options, and that obviously makes things even more, I think, clear in my mind, the way we should go. And I will point out with the ground source heat pump, there's that investment tax credit of 13.4 million or 13.5. That would come if it was available, which, again, I stress, I would not count on that. That comes, I think, 2 years after you start your operations. So it's, 2031. It's not something that happens
Down the road a bit.
down the road. So, in any event.
I just wanted to kind of clarify one thing too, if it's out there, if people are interested, but the whole discussion around EUI is important because most commonly, when we get to 25 or below on the EUI, then you can recover the energy that it takes to run the building in that 25 EUI with solar on a combination of the roof and site. And so when you talk about a building being solar ready in combination with it being an EUI that's lower than 25, you kind of are talking in the same tone about, a building that's not only solar ready, but net zero ready as well, right? And so the two things kind of talk to each other. I just wanted that to be one of the reasons why EUI is important, and why you might not hear us say net zero ready, but we're using other terminology, but they kind of end at the same result, so.
Well, and just on that point, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
One of the cons of the air source heat pump is that you lose a ton of roof space for solar. Is that true?
You lose some, yeah, you lose some, but most of these would have, it's not zero roof space because you have to have air handlers and stuff. It's just about the system that converts the energy to temperature. Like ground sources mostly in a room in the building.
Right.
But you still have to move air, and those are going to be.
Those are still.
Yeah.
The solar you have, you're going to have.
Yeah, some.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you got to get fresh air into the building one way or another, right?
So at a 29 EUI, you're going to pay for.
And I think 29 is not, like, that difference is not that big, and when we do the energy modeling, we can do things to make that come down.
Okay.
Well, I mean, truth be told, one of the challenges we'll have in this project is that the existing to remain portions of the building are going to perform less well than the actual addition. So
Sure.
if we can make the addition do a little bit more work by calibrating it to a higher standard, then it kind of offsets the losses that you're just going to have inherently baked with the building that we're not recladding and doing all that stuff, So that's some strategies we kind of employ sometimes too. But I think this is meant to be, comparative to one another.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And then as we get towards the end of schematic design and start doing a little bit more detailed analysis, these numbers might change and ebb and flow. But I don't know if there's any more questions. Do you want to go straight to do you have more?
Just one more. At what point would we know how feasible ground source is, just well depths and space and all of that?
Why don't I go?
Yeah.
So one of the things, and this is kind of jumping categories a little bit, but the facilities assessment subcommittee, we need to get a solidified recommendation from this building committee in order for us to drive home a design that we're carrying for schematic design, right? Both sustainability and facilities have made a recommendation that we're ready to bring forward to this group tonight. And part of that is to say, spoiler here, is that they're recommending that we go with the air source heat pump system with, as represented, and it could be gas or electric boilers. That decision isn't super critical at the moment, but the main bits of the system are air source heat pump system. But what we talked about in the working groups of those committees was we're not ready to take ground source heat pump off the table, right? Because there may be a moment where the stuff in Washington settles down and we realize that the incentives are still there. And, oh, by the way, we're getting good pricing on them and stuff. And so Terry and I today were working on some budgets in the other cost categories, and we carried a test well budget so that we have that available when we need to pull the trigger. But we're also going to plan for space in the mechanical. Remember, we said the ground source heat pumps are converters for that are in the building.
Yeah.
And so we're going to plan for space in the building where those could exist to transform the heat from a ground source system, which means we have both options available to us, and the ground source would become an alternate option. But our basis of design is air source heat pumps, so that we're kind of positioning you in the best possible place we can by making the recommendation for the less first cost, which is better up front. But if something happens where we realize the long-term cost may actually play out in your benefit, you can make that choice as a building committee during design development or when we're really close to the point of being able to make that decision. So that answers, I think, the question of when. It's not now, but we're trying to position the design right now where we can make that change relatively easily. Or if it doesn't happen as part of the project and say 10 years down the road, some great ground source thing comes around, you guys could make the choice to convert it at that point, and you've already got a sort of pre-engineered way to do that.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to get to.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but then there's also a two-building conversation as well, too?
Yeah.
Because of the upper building that, depending on whether.
Center for
ground source-
Education.
Right. The what?
Center for Education.
For the education center.
I missed that, so the Center for Right, so the Center for Education will need its own plant as well to provide heat and cooling to that building.
And it would be the same recommendation for this and that, same systems, so.
Oh, yes, Mimi.
Yes, through the chair. Chris, I'm so pleased to know that so much thought has gone into the EUIs and meeting these sustainability goals, including long-range planning to be able to accommodate either of the two most sustainable options. That said, I didn't know that the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee was making that endorsement, so that's also good to know. I'm just wondering, there is a letter we have from somebody on the
And
system.
I was waiting for the pause to,
Okay.
I have it right here, I've been holding it all along, so I
Awesome.
did not need a
So we get
reminder.
that perspective as well. Yep. Thank you, Catherine.
Yes. So I'll go ahead and read that now that Mimi brought it up. Martha Simon was unable to attend, so she wrote an email and asked me to read it this evening. So I'll go ahead and do that. It says, "I am unable to attend the June 12th meeting. I would like to share my input into discussion and decision regarding the HVAC system to pursue in the BHS building project. After attending all of the sustainability working group meetings and learning from the consultants about our options and the LCCA, I believe that there are two primary options that we should choose between: ground source heat pumps and air source heat pumps. These are the two most efficient options with the EUIs that can efficiently meet the stated goal within the BOD and the OPR document. The GHSP option is the most efficient and sustainable of the options. To reduce our carbon emissions and energy usage, the most GSHP is the best option. Over a 20-year lifespan, it will also be less expensive than the ASHP. This is even if the federal tax credits are not available. A further benefit of the GSHPs is that it would not use rooftop space, which can therefore be used for solar panels, PV, she put in parentheses. However, the data suggests that GSHP will have a significantly higher first cost when compared to the other options. Given the total cost of the project and how this will impact Burlington taxpayers, we may not want to choose this option. The ASHP is the second most efficient and sustainable option. We would have the option to go fully electric with an electric backup boiler for the coldest weather, or to install a gas-wired boiler for backup. Neither of these options are as efficient as the GSHP. Although electric boilers are not very efficient, it would only be a few days a year that we would need to use it. Despite the occasional cold snaps that we are familiar with, these will become less and less common, and we know from the warmer and warmer winters that we have all experienced in the past couple of decades. If we choose to use a gas-fired boiler for backup with ASHPs, the system can be built so that when the boiler needs to be replaced in 20 years, we can easily replace it with an electric boiler. It would be good to remove gas fuel from the building for air quality and the health of our children. Thus, after attending all the sustainability working group meetings, I strongly recommend that the SBC choose GSHPs or ASHPs. There will need to be discussions involving initial costs to make this decision. Thank you for considering my recommendations, Martha.
And I'm not sure if it was extremely clear, but GSHP is ground source heat pump, and
Yeah, I think I
ASHP?
mentioned that
Okay.
earlier.
I'm just making sure that was.
Yeah. But thank you for the reminder. Anybody have any other comments or additions to, after I read Martha's statements?
I just had a question about roof space. So there is some roof space needed for ground source heat pumps or
Not the pumps themselves, that's just, that's,
for the air handlers?
yeah.
Okay.
You'll need fresh air ventilation, and that strategy does go through the roof.
But then, so an air source heat pump would also need the air handlers too, in addition to
Yeah.
the other units?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Mimi?
Yes, somebody had texted me and asked me to ask this. Why do the heat pumps have to be located on the roof? Maybe if you could just explain that. They're wondering, can't they be located elsewhere? But there must be a technical reason for this, and if you could just explain.
No, sure, yeah, the SOC pumps have to be installed outside. They could be installed at grade, fairly large footprint that we'd have to consider, where we put them around the building, proximity to the mechanical room, other items like that we want to consider. Most common, they're on the roof, but in theory, they could be installed at grade if that becomes a concern. In one of the slides where I spoke about the SOC pump, I had a picture of one that was recently installed. Relatively large. So we'd have to make accommodations at grade, one more up. There we go. So that picture in the upper right-hand corner was one that actually just got started up last week, that we had designed for the Newton Library. So we'd be looking, just a rough number, probably something, maybe 4 or 5 times the size of that. So multiple rows, multiple units installed. So it definitely could be installed at grade. We just have to make accommodations for it.
Marty, that's, it's hard to tell scale, but just from experience, that's, what, like a semi-truck trailer, kind of?
Exactly, yeah. The total length of that is probably,
Yeah, like a
40
53,
feet,
yeah.
somewhere in that 45 feet.
It looks pretty tall, too.
Yeah, and they're tall, so it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's not
probably
nothing.
10 feet.
So it can be done, but I think that's just answer your question. Okay, so I think with all of that discussion, while it's still fresh, we would like to come away from this meeting with a sort of direction on that as that's the decision we're making, and we're going to move with that. And if that changes during DD, we wouldn't encourage to go backwards, but if there's some data that emerges that needs to change, then we can do that later as well. But for SD, building the budget for the project and all of the things that are going to come for town meeting and your vote at the ballots, this is the system that I think our professional team recommends. This is the system, clearly Martha falls within Martha's recommendation as well. This sort of air source basis of design with the ability to add alternate into a ground source later. And the primary reason for that is the first cost is for the air source is more advantageous for the town. So that you guys should discuss how you want to do that, but I think that's what we would like to get a vote of approval for that.
You'd like us to take a vote tonight, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
essentially.
Second?
Okay. Any additional discussion? And if we could see the names up there, and I'm going to go through again.
Eric.
Oh, and Eric is here, but we lost Chris, but we have Eric. So let me, right, so we don't have Chris, and Jeremy's not here. Megan?
Yes.
Eric? Are you unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa?
Yes.
Mimi?
Yes.
And Doug?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
And Mark?
He dropped off.
Oh, he did? Okay, so we
Right.
don't have
But
Mark.
you have me instead.
Oh, yes, Bob.
Plus Bob.
I went right past you.
Oh, Bob.
I forgot to check you. So Bob,
Yes.
boy, most important. And then I'm a yes, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 yeses. Good? 0, 0. All right, so it looks
Thank
like
you.
you can move forward with
Yeah.
that plan.
That's great.
Thank you. And I think that's it for TAPE's update, and I'll turn it back over to Terry.
Yep. So I put this slide together just to touch on working groups. We've had multiple meetings. We've just read Martha's note on sustainability. The facilities assessment group, I think, falls into that category as well. We've had multiple meetings with them. On community outreach, I think what I'm going to propose is we have a meeting in 2 weeks that I would like the heads of each or a member of each of those groups to kind of describe the process they've gone through and decisions that have been grappled with and made as we move towards completing schematic design.
Maybe
So-
just come up with 3 bullet points, so if we, we're putting the working groups here, if each, person, we can have one person take a lead, and then when we have our meetings, they can give us an update and bullet points on what was discussed at each of these meetings, because again, I know I can't attend all of them, even the ones that I am signed up for, and I think it would be good to be able to, in this space, give an update to the community as to what's going on in the working groups. I mean, I know we kind of, in general, discuss it, and here's what we talked about, but if we can just pick like maybe 2 or 3 main bullet points at the next, every meeting, up until the working groups are done meeting.
Yep.
That would be great.
Yep, so I'm just going to tick through these. On the community outreach front, we did have a meeting. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but we do have an informational handout. It wasn't in the packet originally that we sent out last night. I can assure you there has been much back and forth on the informational handout. I would suggest taking a look at it, and then I'll follow up with the chair, and we'll make that official so that you can really share it with anyone. And it's just kind of giving information about the project that people can digest. So that should be out shortly. The site logistics group, I think Chris mentioned this, but that has culminated in sort of the site plan that you have seen. So I think we've moved well along on that front. On design, we've had multiple working group meetings, everything from exteriors to interiors, and I think we have 1 or 2 more to finalize some things there, but that has gone well as well. Chris mentioned food services. The consultant that we used is the same one that we have at Fox Hill, which I think is very useful because that consultant understands the district and what the district needs are. And so that has moved along quite well. Same with programming and learning technology. That's mainly with folks here at the school. And then the last one is financial, and I'll touch on some of the meetings that we've had on outreach with Ways and Means and the Select Board, but know that we've been meeting with them as well. So that's where we are with working groups. I put this, you guys haven't seen a schedule like this in probably some time. Really, I was just trying to focus people's minds really on the red and orange bits at the top. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but you should have it in your packets. That just basically outlines all of the SBC meetings, deliverables that we have related to schematic design, the estimating process, bringing on a CM, community meetings. I mean, effectively, from a high level, we will have an SD, well, I'll take a step back. We should have a CM on board by the 10th or the 13th of July. We will be providing them what is called a schematic design estimate package to, one, the estimator that we've used previously, excuse me, as well as our selected CM. Those guys will have 3 weeks or 3+ weeks to come up with their estimates. We will have a reconciliation in mid-August, just before the SBC meeting, where we will present that estimate to you, and assuming that estimate and/or a target number, because we can do something called value engineering, which I'll explain when we get closer to the date. If that estimate gets approved, that would go to the select board, and the select board would have to vote to put a warrant on town meeting. excuse me, and that would then go to town meeting at the end of September. It's the 29th. Town meeting would take a vote to effectively approve the funding contingent on a debt exclusion. That requires a 2/3 vote in favor of doing that. Assuming that were to be the case, it is likely that a special election would be called. We are targeting the 15th of November, subject to agreement with the Select Board. And so that's the process generally for the next, call it 4 or 5 months, as we move towards a debt exclusion. Excuse me, I just have sorry, something in my throat. So that's really, in the bottom pieces give dates for construction that are well out. I really wanted to focus on the next 4 months that you can see that. There is obviously a lot going on. We're super busy, and the schedule does matter. Every single day does matter right now for us. So I appreciate all the work that people have done supporting this effort, and we're getting closer. So are there any questions on the schedule?
Anyone online?
Excuse me, I gotta get one of Eric's waters.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Usually has some in his office.
Right, so, CM at risk. This is a slide that you've seen before. What I wanted you to know is that we did receive 7 qualified proposals, or pre-qual documents from 7 firms. They're listed on the right there. They all pre-qualified. They received a request for proposal on the 30th of May. We had a site walkthrough. Thank you, Bob and his team, for supporting that on the 5th. So literally, 6 days after they were told, they were in the building. Proposals are due, thank you. Proposals are due on the 27th. And from there, the subcommittee will evaluate those over the course of about a week and a half. And we will interview firms on the 8th and the 9th. That committee will make a recommendation to our broader building committee on the 10th, and we will look to, on the 9th, the 10th, and we'll issue hopefully a purchase order on the 11th, and literally they start working right then and there. So you can see that that's a lot right there, but that's what we need to do, and every single one of these firms has been made abundantly clear what the schedule is, and they are all geared up to support that. I have mentioned that we will have interviews on the 8th and the 9th. We will have those between 12 and 5 here at the school. What I'm saying now is more for the guys that are watching this. They're all aware, so we're going to target 4 interviews on the Tuesday, 3 interviews on the Wednesday, and there'll be 1-hour interviews. They'll start at noon, so it would be like noon to 1, 1:15 to 2:15, 2:30 to 3:30, 3:45 to 4:45. And I've also told them that I'm going to pick their names out of a hat so that they get their order, so that I don't have to pretend like I'm giving anybody a bad spot. So on the first day, it will be Gilbane. So that will be, they get the first slot. The second slot will be Whiting Turner. Third slot on that Tuesday will be Skanska. The fourth slot will be Rich Shawmut. They're a partnership. On the Wednesday, the 3 firms, starting on the first one, will be
Next Tuesday, that's on Bob.
on Consigli. The next one will be Suffolk, and the last one will be Bond Building. So those are what we will do. Those will be reflected in the minutes. I will contact all those firms in the next day to let them know, but I know BCAT will have this video up, and these guys are aware that I was going to address that during the thing. What I can say is we're super excited with this level of interest and coverage. I think it's great. They're all very good construction managers that are capable of doing this job. Where I think the subcommittee, selection committee is going to focus on is really the teams. who is doing the job? The name is one thing, and that's the name on the front, but I actually want to know the name on the back. And because that's what's going to matter on this job. But they all are very qualified firms. And, a key piece to this is, that phasing diagram that Chris showed is absolutely critical to understand, and that is the value, one of the values of bringing these guys on board, is to understand how long it's going to take and what they can do, so that we ensure that we minimize disruption and, maximize the space that we can give in certain amounts of time. And that's super critical, and so I'm looking forward to getting those proposals, and so we'll have more to report at that July meeting.
Thank you.
Let's just say for the record that bond construction has nothing to do.
Has nothing to do with me,
Nothing
that
to
is
do
correct.
with, yes.
There's no,
Relation.
Thank you.
no relation at all.
No
Let's
relation, no
stop
idea who they
the Facebook
are.
rumors before they start.
Nope. No.
That would be interesting. So just in terms of some outreach, just so folks are aware, we did have a community meeting, a schematic design update on the 29th of May. We had some people attend. The nice thing is that it was videotaped. It's on our website. You can get it on BCAT. I encourage you to watch that or this video, because Chris goes through the design in a very thoughtful manner over probably 15 or 20 minutes. And so if folks have questions about that, that's a good place to kind of get familiar with what the design is. Last week on last Monday, we met with Mimi and the Land Use Committee, which was a super productive meeting and informative. They have asked a number of questions which are in your meeting packet. We will be providing answers, Mimi, to the Land Use Committee shortly, and we'll share that with the group. And I think a lot of those will end up going on our website in some fashion in the frequently asked questions, because some of them really fall into a category that I think the broader public will want to see. We had a Ways and Means Committee meeting with Doug and his team, and thank you, Doug, for coming up with that presentation. I think Ways and Means has really looked at the mechanism for obtaining funding for this project and came up with a recommendation to go to town meeting first and follow that up with a debt exclusion vote, and came up with dates. We then took that information and we had a select board meeting this past Monday. I would say the select board is largely in favor of pursuing that option in those dates. I think there's one member that's concerned about having the cost of a special election. The flip side of that, I think many of the members, and I feel this way as well, is that this is a special project. It deserves a special election where the town can focus on one project, one issue, and that, I think, will drive turnout because it's a super critical project, and obviously it has a very large price tag. So I have mentioned this informational handout flyer, which will be available shortly. So please don't send out the one that's in your packet until I tell you that you can send it out, because I just need to confirm one or two other pieces to it. So that's where we are on some outreach. We do have a couple of other community meetings that I'll highlight in the next meeting sessions. So can we move to other topics?
Sure.
I have one.
Yes.
Joining me to my right is Nick Ward. Nick joined our team, so I know you guys have probably started to receive emails from him. And also, Rachel had her baby. So
You want to tell
Rachel.
everyone?
I just did.
I know, but baby,
His name is
Right.
Griffin. He was 7 pounds, 12 ounces. I believe he was born on March 29th. He's home. She's home. They're all good. So congrats, Rachel. I'm fairly certain she's not watching this right now.
I hope not.
So that was my one topic, so.
And Nick, welcome. I know we've met you before, but welcome to the first in-person meeting for the building committee. We appreciate it, and feel free to reach out if you need anything.
Sounds good, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of it and looking forward to seeing what I can help with, so.
Just his first meeting he attended, was his first day, right, I think?
Yeah, land use,
And he put like a very, very long day and.
13
And he
hours.
survived.
13 hours.
13 hours, so, welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So we're done with that, and then the next meetings,
Yeah, can I just touch on these? Yeah, so I mean, they're obviously listed here. We've switched to this, we're having a meeting the fourth Thursday of every month until we get to schematic, till we get to town meeting. But the one on the 26th is meant to be virtual. Chris will give an update on the schematic design. I'll provide an update on, various items, but they're really meant to be informative and, for folks if they have any questions. And I think that one will also be the working group piece that we discussed. The July 10th meeting will be super important because we will be making a recommendation for a construction manager. The meeting on the August 14th will be super critical because we will be recommending an estimate and going to the select board. We have an SBC meeting on the 11th. Again, that one will be important. I know that I will be likely virtual myself, but I want to also target the 18th and the 25th as likely community days or functions. I'm not sure exactly yet, but leading up to town meeting. I know with Fox Hill, the team met with town meeting members if they wanted to meet, I believe, the Thursday beforehand. And so I'd like to probably schedule that or let town meeting members know so that we can provide the latest and greatest on the project. And I listed the two community meetings that we'll have on the schematic design on July 17th and August 21st. And there's still working group meetings ongoing per the last work plan that you saw from TAP A, so.
I would just say pencil in the beer gardens.
Yeah, well, and if the beer garden's happening again, we'll definitely be there. I like the garden, I like beer. And
Beautiful.
So we'll be there.
all right. So thank you. I appreciate that. So we got through the next meeting. So really, next thing is, unless anyone has any questions online
Motion to adjourn?
or comments, what?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, a motion to adjourn, yes. Anyone want to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting's over.